Hello and welcome, beautiful humans, to another week beyond motherhood. I wanted to dive into a topic today that we all know as mothers all too well, and that is around the overwhelming stress that we can often feel when we feel we're going to run late, or when we're feeling rushed. And I mean, this can often happen in the morning with kids. It does for me at least, but it can also happen at any time. And before I dive into that, well, actually, first, we're going to be talking about why the pressure of time can affect us so deeply, especially as mothers, and looking at our nervous system, looking at what shapes these experiences, what influence these experiences, and how we can start to manage this stress a little bit more effectively. But first, I wanted to just share, I had a morning with my children, which was the total opposite of this morning. I woke up, my alarm was set for 6:30. I woke up, I probably didn't get out of bed until 6:40, and my kids were still asleep. We had to leave home at 8 o'clock or just after 8. But I'd said the night before to the kids, we don't have much time to get ready in the morning. We're leaving at 8 o'clock. And I got up, I just started doing my thing, getting into the day. And my kids didn't get up till about 7, or maybe even after 7. So we had about an hour to get ready. And often I would go into this little bit of panic mode, a little bit of stress mode, like, come on, like, get out of bed. We've got to get moving, get your breakfast, all the things. And I went and cuddled them in bed for a little bit, for a few minutes. And then they got up and they wanted to go and play outside in the cold. It's the middle of winter here, and it's been pretty chilly by Brisbane standards the last couple of days. And I had the initial thought of, no, we don't have time for this. Like, you need to just start getting ready. And then I paused, because they were already having fun, playing beautifully together. And I paused, I took a breath, and just seeing that joy and seeing that play between the two of them, I didn't want to interrupt that. So I got their breakfast, they ate outside while they were playing. And then when they came, I asked them to come in. I was like, it's time to pack up. It felt so seamless. Is that the word? Seamless is the word. It felt seamless. It felt easeful. And although I was like, we do need to get ready, it wasn't from a forced, heightened state, I suppose. And yeah, by the fact that they were outside did give me that space to start to get myself organized, get the lunches organized, get myself fed as well. So, and then we left, we got in the car and we were out the door on time. And it was amazing, because often in the mornings, it does feel really rushed for me. And it can be a real trigger for me to have that sense of, I'm going to be late, because I had to be home by a certain time as well, do drop-offs, pick up groceries and be home like within about an hour, and a round trip after doing all the drop-offs and things. So I knew that time was really important. And, I don't like to be late. I had a client. I didn't want them to be waiting for me. But I was able to move through that. And what felt different was that I didn't put the pressure on my kids, because often when we start to put that pressure on ourselves, we start to feel stressed. And then our nervous systems, which I'm going to talk about, start to react and come from that stress response. And then our kids, they match that energy. Our nervous systems can connect and mirror each other. But today I was like, you know what? It's okay. Like, we're going to get it done. Took a breath, let them do their thing. And because this is what I feel, because they were able to play and get their own energy out in that way, and play and eat at the same time, they were regulated and I was regulated. So it felt so spacious this morning to be able to, in a very short period of time that, we did only have a short period of time to get ready this morning, to still be able to move through the morning, to have joy, to feel spacious, to be regulated. Majority, like there was one point I was like, okay, boys, we do need to get the car now. But the tone, I wasn't like, get in the car, come on. It was, all right, time is up. Let's get it done. And that can make such a huge difference as well, because when we start to snap or raise our voice or get, that real snippy, for want of a better word, to our kids, they pick up on that. They pick up on the tone of our voice. So I wanted to share that with you. And let's be honest, that doesn't happen all the time, but it was particularly noticeable, even driving the boys to drop off. I was like, wow, that felt so spacious and so good this morning. And it just has set me up for this amazing day ahead. And just coming from that spacious, regulated state, that's kind of carried on. It's now the afternoon. So I wanted to share that with you. And yes, of course, it's not always the way. So I want you to, if you can, if it's available to you, close your eyes and picture this, because this is what can often happen. You're trying to get your kids ready for school, daycare, clock is ticking. You're looking at your watch. Every minute seems to slip away faster than the last. And you start to feel that sense of urgency build. Your heart rate increases. You can feel your heart thumping away at your chest. And then suddenly the simplest tasks feel insurmountable, out of reach, too much. And you can just feel your blood boiling almost, like, oh my gosh, or, you're starting to twitch. Does this sound familiar to you? Like what's coming up in your body, even just thinking of that right now? And this reaction and this response, it's not just in our head, it's rooted in the way that our nervous system responds to stress. And when we feel rushed or we're running late, our body goes into what is known as our fight-flight response. And this response, it's really designed to help us react in dangerous and threatening situations. And our ancestors relied on this for survival, literally survival, life or death situations. But in our modern life, this same response can be triggered by everyday stresses like running late, and our brain perceives the situation as a threat. It can't tell the difference between an actual threat and a perceived threat. So then our body is then flooded with stress hormones like cortisol, like adrenaline. Our heart rate increases, and our body gets prepared for either fighting the threat or running away, fleeing it. And while this response is super helpful in real danger, it's less useful and less helpful when the threat is something like being late for an appointment or late getting the kids to school or being late to work. But the physiological response and reaction that's happening in our body remains the same. And it then causes us to have those feelings of overwhelm, to feel anxious. So that's just a little bit what's actually going on in your body when this happens. So why is this response particularly strong for mums like you and me? And so part of that answer does lie in our conditioning and our societal expectations, because from a young age, as young girls, as even into early adulthood, where we are conditioned to take the role of the caregiver. And as women grow into motherhood, they often feel this heightened sense of responsibility for managing the household, for taking on the mental load and making sure everything's running smoothly, all the things are ticking off the to-do lists and all the things. And society does still to this day place immense pressure on mothers to quote unquote be perfect, to be, that image of the super mom who can balance it all, the career, maintain a spotless home, and still have time for self-care and all of those things. And while, yes, we can do these things, it also is unrealistic. It's an unrealistic standard, because then it does set us up for failure, because we can't always meet, really no one can meet these expectations all the time. There's a balancing act, and sometimes the scales are going to weigh to one one end than the other, and so to speak. So, you know, for centuries, when we're talking about the role of patriarchal society and its influence on these pressures, these patriarchal norms have really dictated that women should be the primary caregivers while men are seen as the providers. And, you know, where your stance is on that, I guess that's not super relevant, but this division of roles, it can really reinforce that idea that women must excel in managing the home, caring for their children, often without equal support from their partners. Not all the time, but these expectations, they're not just personal, they're like deeply, deeply embedded in our cultural narratives and institutions. And the patriarchal structure that places this unfair burden on mothers to uphold these traditional roles, even if they've got a job or run a business or pursue their ambitions and passions, like there's still this expectation, and it can create a constant sense of I'm not good enough, or we get the mum guilt, and all of those things that can run really deep within our DNA, really. And then the pressure for mothers to meet a lot of these conflicting demands, we're trying to do it all, it can cause us to feel really stressed. It can cause us all these feelings of overwhelm and not enoughness. So it's just really important to recognize these standards and these constructs that have been placed on us as women from a young age, from when we were girls. And, you know, we can challenge them and we can change them, of course. But it's not, you know, it's not all bad. So how do we actually manage and navigate this overwhelming feeling when it comes to stress, when it comes to feeling that pressure of I'm going to be late, or, you know, if it's going to mean something about me if I'm late, or because we're good at making meaning of things. So something which I kind of spoke to briefly at the start from my morning this morning was when you feel your heart rate starting to rise, when you feel that thumping of your chest, it's moving a lot quicker, that anxiety building, a simple first thing that you can do is just take a pause and just take a deep breath and become curious about what is actually happening in my body right now. And that can just help you to connect a bit more with your body. That can help you to regulate your nervous system and really just bring you back to the present moment. So that is something that you can try. And another really effective tool, and something that I still do, I have a lot about mantras and how we can use them to not only reframe our thoughts and build those new neural pathways with our thought patterns, but also rewire our nervous system, our body, because they both need to be working together, is instead of thinking I'm failing or I'm not a good mum because I'm late, it can be really just leaning into that self-compassion and adopting a self-compassion mindset. And whether it's using a mantra, whether it's saying it out loud in your head, singing it, chanting it, reminding yourself that you're doing your best, and running late occasionally does not mean that you're a bad mum. It does not change the worth of you as a mother or as a human. And sometimes I like to think, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario if I'm late, or if the kids aren't at school on time, or if I don't get to work on time? What's the worst thing that will happen? And actually think, and when more times than not, when you actually think about that worst case scenario, it's actually not as bad as what we are thinking and feeling in our body. So it can be a really great reminder of, oh, okay, well, the worst thing is my client has to wait for 5 minutes. The worst thing is my son has to get a late slip. So just reminding yourself what would actually happen, and being really compassionate towards yourself. And I guess a real practical tool, and something, you know, I don't do all the time, and I certainly didn't do it this morning, even though our morning ran quite smoothly, but something can be helpful from a practical sense is actually planning ahead. And that can just alleviate some of the pressure. And that can be preparing things the night before, whether that's packing your kids' lunches the night before, or getting your clothes organized, or putting things in the car that you can put in the car the night before, anything like that, that can help you feel a little bit more organized and help to reduce some of that pressure the next day, can really help, especially when we're talking about mornings. It can just help to run a little bit more smoothly and reduce those feelings of feeling rushed and feeling overwhelmed by trying to get everything done in the morning. So it's really important just to be realistic, and sometimes that means lowering some of those expectations. We can have such high expectations of ourselves as mothers, and just acknowledging that perfection is unattainable, it's BS, and it's okay for things to not go as planned sometimes. Like, life is unpredictable, and we can really learn from giving ourselves grace during those moments. And it's so important too. So I wanted to leave it at that for today. I hope that's given you some food for thought, helps you to maybe just, breathe into it's okay to be late. It's okay if mornings don't go, or if I don't get somewhere on time, things don't go as planned, and really start to feel safety within that. And we can use our breath to anchor in. We can use our mantras and our self-compassion to anchor into that and to feel into our body. So just really encouraging you and inviting you to, if you have not used some of these little tips and tools before, to maybe give them a go, especially on those mornings, especially on those days where things may feel rushed, you are feeling that additional pressure, and knowing you're not alone in your feelings, and that in itself can be incredibly comforting. So until next week, beautifuls, I hope you have an amazing week ahead, and I will speak to you on the next episode.